All right, cyber traders, welcome. I'm back here for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk workshop here this Tuesday, March 12th. Happy birthday, Robin. It's actually my mother, as if she's listening. But great to see all of our students and members joining us here. Got Chuck, got Alex, got Yehuda, Brian, Rajan, Scott, all of our students and members just joining us live inside our cyber group trading room. Great to have you back there. Great to have you back on YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, etc. Guys, we have a big day today, big week altogether. So first and foremost, if you're not followed or subscribed to any of our social media streams just yet, actually, please do so now. Go a long way, not just for us, but for yourself, actually, this week at Cyber Trading U, because actually coming up as soon as I finish up this workshop, Fausto will be doing a 3-day boot camp introductory to day trading series. So for all of our students like Alex, Margaret, Chuck, of course, you folks already are well beyond that. You are full-time students of CTU. Always look to support the team, though. He'll be starting that at 12 o'clock Eastern time. Rich, if you want to post the link for that in the main chat right there so our students can register, reserve their seat, and especially on social media, just scan that QR code, in fact, to join that workshop, or you could follow us just on social media at Cyber Trading U. Again, that is a 3-day bootcamp series, introductory to day trading series that Fausto will be beginning coming up at 12 o'clock. So with that said, let's hop right into the thick of things here because, well, I'll tell you what, not just because we have to finish up early for Fausto, but there really hasn't been a whole lot to talk about within the stock market. I say that because really just the last week or two, last 3 weeks even, we've seen so much move on the percent gainers list. All of these, stocks, whether they're cheap or not, even, honestly, just over the last month or so between Nvidia, ARM, Coinbase, VKTX, it actually hasn't all been cheap stocks, but there has been so much moving off of news and well, it's like kind of like getting the life sucked out of the market the last 2 days between yesterday and then today. Even with the CPI that came out, things were a little rugged to begin. We had that drop off early in the morning, in fact, coming off the CPI, and then we ended up getting the bounce a little bit afterwards. Things are looking good across the market right now. So, hey, heading into the late morning, early afternoon, there may even be some trades coming up here, at least that we'll be able to focus on that may be going with the market. Really quick, actually, just from one of us right now, Tony actually says you can't access the Traders Talk through the student portal. Tony, one of our phase 1 students right there, and we're actually just messaging him live right now on YouTube right there. So perfect. There we go, Tony. So just check your email inbox. One of my colleagues will look to send you over just a quick link to our trading room. But without further ado, well, this morning, what were the best trades that we could have focused in on today? Well, although I was kind of complaining before how the life got sucked out of the market the last day and a half, the CLRO had made a really strong push across the morning. Hey, really quickly, just to get this one out the way. This is a very simple question that we just go through here in Traders Talk each and every week. We do our Traders Talk workshop here this every Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern time. What typically happens 30 minutes before then, folks? For Alex, Chuck, Margaret, all of our students here, 30 minutes before 11 o'clock Eastern time, what typically happens to the stocks that we are trading? More often than not, at least, it's not as if the market makers out there have their stopwatch where they say, up 10:30 Eastern time, it's that Fausto rule. But, that's where you're typically expecting reversals, right? Says Lee and Alex. So, hey, easy to say, this CLRO sure reversed right around that time, at least. All right. Well, we got that out the way, at least, right? It's easy to look at a picture like this and say, what had happened after the fact. But as far as what we focus on in our basic phase 1 curriculum, the cyber clock, 10:30. So you wait the first 5 minutes after the market opens, first 3 to 5 minutes, and then from there, if there's a good opportunity to jump in, we'll take it. Obviously, we got to set our stop, put our seatbelt on. Of course, this could go the other way, right? It's easy to say it moved up afterwards. This morning, hey, I took a loss on PLTR. It was dropping down. This was a stock I took the time to prep up in advance, line up. I thought we'd get a bounce. We did not at first. So just goes to say you got to put your seatbelt on as soon as you enter any trade. I mean, this is actually like 2-3 times more volatile than that PLTR trade, at least there. But that's where I'll tell you, though. Going into the open, we'll focus more on stocks that are trending upward prior to the opening bell. Well, this was shaken back down at least after 9:15, but it was up percentage-wise from 8:30 going into the market open, at least the majority of that move there. It was pushing up pretty nicely. So a lot of us were focused on it for another squeeze up afterwards. Let's take a quick look to see where we had big support, big resistance on this trade. I got in on this trade later on. I missed out on like the first one or two good levels to take this trade from. And then from there, once it broke from the next one, I was able to get in. I didn't really chase it in terms of a reckless, irresponsible entry, but I got in late on the trade. So if you're getting in late on any trade, you got to follow that reversal time rule pretty handily and think about what happens normally around 10:15, 10:30. All right, I got Bookmap. I got the heat map open right now for all of our students here. We teach this all throughout our curriculum. Phase 1 at the very end, I have a full 60-minute class on the heat map, and then from there, one-on-one coaching spread throughout the Phase 2 curriculum I teach as well. And then obviously, where Fausto's trading live, he'll show this in and out as well. But let me ask us here, when we're looking at this heat map, when we're looking at this page going from left to right, what prices seem to have the orange horizontal lines, stretching across them? And when I say lines, maybe let's just focus on just the easiest one out there, the one that stands out the longest, the most. What's the one that's easiest on the eyes for you? Thomas, right there, one of our trial members. Welcome aboard, Thomas, and all of our new members joining us here. And alongside Thomas, our students like Larry, Leonard, Alex, Keith. There we go, 180. You got a few different red and orange here, right? But what's the one that's stretching across the page the longest, the one that's easiest on the eyes there? The stock breaks over it, right? It's breaking over it here prior to the opening bell. All right. Well, really quick, I think for any of our students that are with me every week, every month in class, I think you know where I'm going to next. When a stock is moving up, 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 what color are we seeing more on time and sales? Just every week in Traders Talk. It's the same steps because, well, there's a lot of noise out there, not just on this one trade, but across the whole stock market, where we have to be very disciplined with this step by step that we focus on, especially while we have the chance to here in pre-market. So Margaret, Sam, Alex, Phil, green. All right, perfect. What do we typically nickname green, folks? What do we typically nickname green as far as momentum goes? Sam, Alex, right away, buying, right? So that's the simple thought. There was some good buying at first when this squeezed over 180. The seller got taken out. It got taken out because people bought the shares from him, right? So, we had good buying pressure, at least in this sequence at 180. And, well, I'll tell you, since it broke over this orange line here, you could also say 167. You could. All right, well, we'll show what happens in just a bit. Now, outside of these orange lines, let me just ask Sam, Larry, Margaret, Alex, all of our students here chatting with me. Not looking at this heat map, without looking at this heat map here, where are we most likely to find icebergs? What common set of price levels? Looking for a simple answer here. No curveball, Sam. Just getting simple stuff out here right now, right? 50-cent levels, whole numbers, right? So without looking at the heat map, there, because, well, there actually wasn't really much resistance at $2 on the heat map, but you'd still want to assume that at $2 is going to be a key level. You could also say 150 as support should it drop that low. All right, let's plot our lines that we had, the buying levels. We said 167 a little bit, but it was really that 180 we were harping on more, right? We were saying 180. That was the easier level on the eyes from the heat map. The upper green line here, I'm just going to plot. I got a couple lines, that's all. Now, when the market opens up, I'm just going to kind of zoom in here, show you what happens. When the market opens up, if you're following this stock pretty intently, well, we know that we're not trading from 930 to 935, right? We know that. But what else are we looking at right when the market opens up for this stock? There's one last level we need to plot. I focus on this in the phase 2 course quite a bit. It pops up pretty much right at 930, right? And Chuck, we're not focused on callouts right now, my friend. We'll do that afterwards. We got plenty of time to trade today, but we're here to learn, right? Sam, Phil, opening bell, print, absolutely. So, hey, look at this, Chuck. You take a look right here, this green dot right when the market opens up. How many shares is that, folks? I want all of us to answer that for me. It says volume, and then the number to the right of where it says volume in that data box. It might be tiny to see. My apologies if it is, but What's the size next to the word volume? Great to see Irving joining us here. Irving, always look to join us in our trading room if you have the chance, but otherwise, always great to see you either way on YouTube. One of our students here joining us. Yeah, got about 151,000 shares, right? 151, 152,000 shares. Okay, really quick. Let's do a little size comparison here. Little size comparison. The iceberg order that was out there at 180 was worth about 22,000. This is worth 152,000. Can you please tell me what's the more important level to watch? Is it 180 or is it where this got filled at basically 169? It looks like it got filled basically at 169. Yeah, the 151,000 folks. There's no curveball question with that. It's a very simple one. So if we are respecting this level as much as we are, which we should, well then how much more important should this level be? Right? Now, of course, we're going to plot this line right here. And this is pretty close to at least one of the other levels that we had, the 167. Basically, the combination of these two prices that are so close to each other will create a range of a level to work off of. So it looks like in hindsight, once it finally chopped above it, it took about 3, 5, maybe 7 minutes. Not long. You wait the first 3 to 5 minutes after the market opens up. It drops on the next candle after. So you're not trying to catch a falling knife in terms of just placing the order on the bid. That's horrible risk management, honestly. So typically you got to wait to see this break under, but then break back over, under and over. And within the first 3 to 5 minutes, I can't stress enough, we are not trading this year. So it looks like really shaky. It's not that shaky because we're just simply not trading in this time frame. So afterwards, on the next slip under over, you get your entry off. It looks like a really good trade. Again, Chuck, right now, we are not looking to make call outs right now. He might have me on mute. That is totally fine. I'll just keep moving along. So with that in mind, at least, this pushed up towards $2. Well, look what happened, Chuck. The first time this tested resistance here at 2, the first test typically is the best test where we see the level hold. So did it break above it on that candle where my cursor is? Yeah, of course. But that's not really what I'm expecting, or that's not really what I'm thinking where I say resistance holding. Like, I'm not expecting it to perfectly hold under the penny level exactly. If trading was that easy, you and I would not be here. It's that simple. Now, what I embrace though is to see at least for it to not hold under, for it to hold under perfectly. Otherwise, to get the false breakout. I'm sitting on my hands here at least at this point. Pop, drop. Now, this could be a legitimate false breakout where you look to take, because really the more times it is pressing up against the level, you would like to think that there's a good chance in which it will make that pop. And this right here is where I took my first trade on this stock. I took a loss on PLTR before that, but essentially where this ended up breaking above 2, I jumped in at 201. I got out at 197. All right, so with that in mind, it ended up beginning to make a bit of a pullback. I took a bit of a loss. Let me ask, did anyone else jump in on this trade today, the CLRO, whether it was from where I got in from originally or even afterwards? All of our students that are, tuning into this workshop right now, right? Charlene, I see, Alex, Leonard, Phil, all of our students joining us right now look to have followed this, it seems. All right, well, it's a matter of this, right? When a stock breaks through a big level, what are we expecting shortly afterwards? When a stock breaks through a big level, what are we expecting shortly afterwards? A big move up, right? Hopefully up, hopefully up. A big move shortly after is simply the answer right there. We hope up, but we can't just guarantee up. We can't kick our feet up and just expect, oh, perfect. Again, if trading was that easy, right? We always got to make sure that we put our seatbelt on. So I jumped in on this trade and I felt good on the entry. It popped up towards, what was this at? 205. So it wasn't a quick trade, but pop, I felt good. I set my stop. It's like, all right, shit, that sucks, but so be it. Now, at that point, though, I didn't jump back in on this trade until the next one that I had, and that was a little bit later on. It was here where my cursor is. So I was a little reluctant to try and jump back in. It broke over too. It took a couple stabs at it afterwards, so it wasn't so clean at first. But this is where I'll tell you, just in hindsight, I wish I took this trade from here. When a stock breaks above resistance, and it does run off of it, we'd like to think that resistance would initially become what? You could tell the traders that are most disciplined are the ones that are tuning into the workshop and not having their eyes caught on the shiny object in the room, the stock that's actually moving live right now, because, folks, market's not closing permanently. There's going to be another trade as soon as we finish this up. So trust me, I could tell who is more disciplined than not just by tuning into this workshop. Support, all of us answering here. I see Thomas, Cal, Larry, Lee, Alex, Keith, Margaret, Sam, Phil, all of us just joining us right now. So I'll tell you what, I was focused on other trades. I was looking at this. I was like, I don't know. Because of the first trade I took, right? I didn't want to get chopped up again. But in hindsight, resistance becoming support, this would have been a sweet entry right where my cursor is. Now, where I'll tell you, I got back in on this trade. It was once it broke the highs off of 230. It was just kind of seeing continuation at this point here. Where was it? Where was it? Right there. And it was a small trade. I was looking for a push up to 250. And at that point, it tried breaking higher. It didn't, it couldn't continue. And from there, I took a smaller profit, but win's a win. Ended up making the push above the highs. There was an iceberg at 230. So the first test of it right here, pop and drop. And then once it pushed back up, I took an entry right where my cursor now is. I was looking for more and more, didn't get it, but at least it's a winning trade, right? And at least I got a small piece of the pie in the grand scheme of things. Now, I'll tell you though, this morning, I was not so jumpy on CLRO myself right at 9:30. Afterwards, I was. When it pushed up to 2, I was. But this morning, and you see, I literally put all these lines on this chart in front of you. So it goes to show I wasn't as interested in this trade as I was maybe on a stock otherwise, a stock that I had lines for. I took the time to prep going into the market open. CLSK. Well, PLTR was the other of the two. PLTR, like I said originally, and CLSK. These two stocks were the two I was more jumpy towards, not because they were up or down a lot. Honestly, they were just more sideless stocks. There wasn't a whole lot that was like looking too great from the gainers list. Of course, CLRO. But I was thinking more just a stock I do well on more often than not, just from my personal side list here. So PLTR, I did take a loss on it first off that 25 level. But from there, though, I moved over to CLSK. CLSK dropped off right out the gate. I wasn't looking for support here because, well, I was on PLTR. And it broke right through support. It didn't break under, then back over. So at this stage right here, I'm thinking, all right, well, we'll see what happens at $16, right? I mean, the more it drops, it's going to fall to my next level, my next set of support lines that I have. Now, if it breaks under 16, where's my next level from there? Yikes. Not until 15 or so. That's a big drop. So really on this trade, I got to make sure 16 begins to hold as support. And the more it breaks under it, as you see here, that's where I'm thinking it's going to continue. So that is what happened. It ended up beginning to test 16. It broke under and over. I wasn't there for that first trade. It broke back under the level. So right where my cursor is, I am thinking like all right, it's going to be a decent short. I think it could drop down to that $15 area. I did not short it, but I am expecting more of a drop. So I just kind of turned away. It's dropping a little bit more here. And then all of a sudden, this damn thing begins to push back up. And I'm a little confused here because I'm thinking, all right, well, it should have made a lower low. And it did. It did technically make a lower low, but it really didn't continue to my next set of support lines. And also, like I had asked of you, well, what time is typically reversal time? 10:15, 10:30, right? So am I so jumpy? Am I so giddy in terms of time to take this trade? Nope, not really. Now, it is at this point where we are beginning to see a good bounce within the SPY. So thankfully, we did get a bounce all around a little bit earlier than expected. At 9:49, 9:50, SPY did make a pretty good slingshot, pretty good bounce. So I saw that. I was beginning to see this CLSK trade begin to push up. And it was really right off of 1610, 1615. Let me show the heat map here. This was not really off of a preset level. 16 was that support line I had. Here we go. So it began to push back up above 16. Big seller here got taken out. So some potential buying momentum as this began to squeeze up here a bit. And that's where I was thinking, all right, well, if the SPY is going to actually make a pretty unexpected bounce sooner than we're thinking, well, what's the worst that happens? If I set a stop just a few pennies below my level, all right, I'm not going to keep taking that trade over and over if I lose, but if I am watching this trade from earlier and it is beginning to make a nice push back up, and if there is a level I could try and jump in from and set a tight stop right underneath, all right, well, there's a potential trade there. So it was pretty much right as it was building back up off of these highs at here at this point. I was looking for a higher low, pretty much off of past resistance from the chart. And easy to say, but ended up making that move kind of here, under, and over. So it led to the entry, and at this point, I'm thinking, all right, as long as it doesn't begin to pull back, I think that we could be in good shape. I took some money out at the VWAP price, so it was a quick scalp entry for me, at least on half my trade. And then at this point, it was a matter of seeing the VWAP hold as support afterwards. I was a little afraid of that failing, meaning like to see it just completely collapse, just because it was a pretty early reversal that we had across the whole market. So a lot of times when I do take that type of trade where the stock bounces sooner than I'm thinking, and I actually take that trade, I'm like, all right, well, let's see if it can go. A lot of times it pulls back down, it makes a lower high and pulls back, and it's like, oh shoot, all right, well, I should have just followed that basic cyber clock rule, right? Well, here in this case, I ended up taking the chance and it worked out. Let's say if you were waiting, let's say if you didn't take the trade from 16 or so here, you see it pop up without you. All right, well, where do you take the trade from? Because it is possible it does make a pullback here. It is possible it begins to pull back and try and make a higher low from really where I got in from, really from the 1615 area. But if the stock ends up making that support build as we're getting closer to 1015, 1030, well, that could be the entry you're looking for. So it begins to push up. It pushed up towards 17. I got out on the second half of my trade as it was dragging down here. I left some money on the table because I didn't get out sooner, meaning let some unrealized profit get washed away because I was looking for more. And then at this stage, as it pulled back, I just took the remaining half of my trade out. But hey, it actually dragged all the way down, not just to where I got in from my price, but actually right down to that 16 price exactly. There could have been room to try and anticipate a bounce from that point still, right? To see support build off of 16 or off of 1610, 1615, as I'd previously said. And even now, let's say if we get a better squeeze up within the market, or with this being a Bitcoin mining stock, well, if we get a pop on Bitcoin, you would like to think that this would have at least some reaction to it. All right, well, in this case here, I do have a resistance line, pardon me, right here at 1672. If this could begin to break above 1672 on good momentum, well, that could lead to the next entry. It could lead to a break through that big level on the way up, and that could promote a very good entry, especially since it tested it once here and it did reject. But the more times that this stock, or really any stock, presses up against a big level, it nips it, it punches it, it snaps through it, you're seeing that level get weakened. So over time, you're looking for that larger, more decisive reaction. So I don't know if it's going to exactly be on this next test. It might be on a couple of tests from now. Typically at this time of the day, truly you do want to wait a little bit more than you should look to just be impulsive and just jump in. But it is to say the more times the stock tests a level in a shorter time frame, we should look to get that better move. So, at least off of 1672. We'll see what happens coming up. But, it just goes to say that there could always be room for an entry. It's a matter of A, what's the trend? The stock is down percentage-wise on the day today, mind you. But, hey, speaking of like trends, just the last hour, last 30 minutes, 40 minutes, it's not the strongest pop, it's not the strongest uptrend, but it's making higher lows. I don't think anyone could say that it's not. So it's a matter of saying, okay, well, where do you have a good level? Where do you have good resistance? Is there a big resistance? Is there a big support? If there's not, then hell, I'm not going to look to take the trade, right? Even if the stock moves up, So there's a bunch of trades that I'll look at where I don't take, but at least for this one, I have a level, I have a trend slowly developing upward. If we can get the punch above 1672, that at least promotes the entry. All right. Now you might ask, like, why do I have these levels here? Well, that's where I take a lot of time in the curriculum in phase two, namely, to break down how I set up my mornings. I'll look through level three and level four, as I showed you. I'll plot 50-cent levels or whole numbers depending on the price of the stock. This is 15, 16, $20 at times. Typically, whole number levels are going to reign supreme on CLSK, hence why you see 16, hence why you see 17 there. So, I take a lot of time in our main curriculum, namely phase two, to go over at least the whole process in depth A to Z as far as how I set my levels. For reference, this is actually, I believe, the monthly close back from this past month, if I'm not mistaken, 1672, right? All right. So folks, hey, if you have any questions in relation to at least the CLSK trade I covered, CLRO, obviously we talked about just before, this trade pretty much is done for right now. I think the entire day this seems to be, it's not really a stock we tend to focus on quite often. And for all the times that it's popped, maybe it's moved up gradually over time, but we're day trading this. This is not a swing trade. So at least after this big volume spike day, it sure died off the days after. That's where you got to be careful after a stock has made a big move. Well, what happens when the volume just completely dissipates? The stock's going to drop, right? So, that's just something to focus on. If you have any questions on these two trades, the CLSK or this one here, the CLRO, let me know. But I do want to jump back briefly, if I can, to the miners. I want to jump back to the Bitcoin stocks, the mining stocks there, because, it's not just me that's a big fan of them. A lot of our students here have been following Mara and Coinbase and CLSK. Mind you, Coinbase is not a mining stock, but it is just to say we've had a great interest in the crypto stocks, with Bitcoin clearly making an all-time high just from yesterday. But there's been a lot, actually, not a bit, there's been a lot of divergence between the crypto mining stocks and Bitcoin itself as a whole. I actually found this last night. I want to show you this little show and tell here. Might be a little blurry, so if it is, my apologies. But basically, this shows the divergence over the last like 30 or so days between, or maybe the last 2 or so weeks at that, between Bitcoin and the miners. So this is actually a miner ETF. So I'm sure Mara, CLSK, Riot, all making up this ETF to a great degree. This is the mining ETF here that's dropping, and this is Bitcoin. What the hell? Well, obviously, I got a bunch of questions that came in from students about this, like why is there such a big divergence? These are students that know at least that these mining stocks are not going to follow Bitcoin 100%. They know that at least, but this is a big separation, like a lot more than you would think, almost to the point where you'd figure, is there bad news out on the miners? What gives? All right. Well, a couple of things with this. Just umbrella comment here to begin with this. Um, has anyone ever realized that Microsoft just does not trade perfectly with the stock market? Does anyone realize that Microsoft does not trade perfectly with the stock market? Does anyone realize that Nvidia does not trade perfectly with the stock market? Do you realize that Nvidia does not trade perfectly even with the chip ETF SOXL? They trade differently, right? So for anyone new to these stocks, at least that's new, they move fairly well together, but not 100%. So don't solely rely on following Bitcoin in order to follow the miners. What if there's divergence between Bitcoin and the SPY? Well, what do you think the miners are going to do there? These are publicly traded companies. So it's not like they just own Bitcoin and that's it, right? What happens if the dollar gets weakened altogether? All right, well, I'd like to think that there's going to be movement all around within the market collectively. So there's not going to be 100% correlation between the miners and Bitcoin. Is there 100% correlation between gold mining stocks and gold? No. Now, that's just the first umbrella comment, right? And I think a lot of us know that, but I just got to cross my T's, dot my I's with saying that. The question begs, though, why? And I don't have a definitive answer. Hate to break it to you. Don't have a sure, definitive answer. But this is a thought that I had, and it makes sense. This just makes sense, at least. I had two thoughts, actually, with this. So the first thought, this was back from a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I was chatting Brian about this and a few other students separately on the side. And I was saying, like, with CLSK dropping off as much as it was and Mara was at the time, all right, well, maybe traders are trying to short the mining companies one more time under the premise that Bitcoin was not going to break all-time highs and under the premise that it would fail and then come back down heavy. Well, when we came back up to 69,000, we sure shook back down pretty quick. So I thought that was the case, but clearly, once Bitcoin broke all-time highs yesterday, well, it was shaking around, but it wasn't coming back down like Mara was. Like this got whacked yesterday, right? And even actually, I'm sorry, it was even from the before that, the Friday before that, ended up coming back down pretty heavily afterwards. Well, that's when Bitcoin was hitting its all-time high. That's when it shook back down. But the day after, well, we should have been running. And clearly we were running just the other direction, right? We were just continuing this drop. So truly what gives? Clearly that first thought I had was not true, or it was not the case, it was not correct. All right, well, here's what I'm thinking now. I think that, and it's not surefire, but my thought would be that a lot of traders are pouring money out of the mining sector or the miners, and they're just focused on Bitcoin itself, or rather, just not mining ETFs, but just the Bitcoin ETFs in specific. So I think the one I showed you, the ETF here that's shown, what is this? WGMI. We are going to make it. I think that's one of the mining ETFs, WGMI. Yeah, look at this drop. This is pretty similar to the move that Mara and CLSK made. This here, I think, is the Vanguard ETF, right? Is this the Vanguard one? I think it is IBTC. So, this one at least here shows a lot better of a push up, right? This is not as much mining affiliated as it is simply just Bitcoin. So my guess, it's just a thought, it's a guess, but I think, some traders are taking their money out of the miners, whether it's the stocks specifically or the mining ETF, which drops the stocks altogether. And essentially, perhaps they're going into just different ETFs that follow Bitcoin specifically. That's it. Thomas asking, money moving into Bitcoin rise? Yeah, I mean, altogether, right? I mean, that's what happened when the ETFs first launched, but now perhaps you're seeing that even more so, just separating between the miners and the Bitcoin ETFs otherwise. Brian says, plus the interest rates too. I could see when we get our first rate cut, the miners will rock. Very, very potentially, right? When's the next Fed meeting? When's the next FOMC? Was it next week or the week after? I know, obviously, CPI today, PPI on Thursday, retail sales also on this Thursday, but I'm sure that we have a Fed meeting coming up soon. We'll figure it out then. All right. Got a couple chats here, at least from Phil, and then Luis just shortly after, I think. So from Phil, Josh, do you use only the matrix, meaning the TradeStation matrix here on the far right, or do you also rely on Bookmap for your level placements? Mainly Bookmap because it's a better tool, but the matrix as well. Don't ignore the matrix 100% if you have Bookmap, because there may be orders from other ECNs that Bookmap doesn't get the data from. It's not often, but that's where I say you do want to rely on the matrix still, but I'm more Bookmap specific because it's just a little bit easier to read in the grand scheme of it. Not only is it that, but also Phil brought up as well, which is very true. Phil says the matrix does not have a higher end of values, meaning what Phil's saying, you can only see so much on the bid, you can only see so much on the ask, right? And that's a big part of it, right? But in terms of at least watching the nearest price levels, you still want to keep an eye out there. I have it on my platform still, right? So I'm looking at it here and there. There we go. Louis says the next Fed meeting is actually next week, so the 19th and 20th. There we go. All right, so we will see what happens then, or otherwise throughout this year with that first rate cut again. But um, Louis also says different floats, capitalization, moats, expenses, countries, principal. Yeah, so every stock's different, obviously, but that's where we say just pretty much every day here. If there are stocks that are moving together, they might move somewhat similarly, but they're not going to be 100% correlated or 100% the same. Obviously, AMD and NVIDIA move similarly. They're different prices, right? But it's not even just that. If you look at the Bitcoin stocks, CLSK, Riot, Mara, those are our main horses in that race. Coinbase, obviously, too, but the miners. There's plenty of other miners, though. There's like 20 other freaking mining stocks that we don't need to focus on because they're trading less volume. They're on lower floats. Not as many people are nearly as interested in them, right? So, that's where we say, of course, absolutely, Louis is correct. Every stock is different floats, different volume, different market cap, etc. So, over time, the more that you're following us in our trading room, you'll get to learn at least what stock is more worth it than others. That's where even this morning, PLTR, for as choppy as this was just before and then dropping again, I thought there was the potential to see at least a bounce at first. All right, didn't get it. The reason I like PLTR is because it moves pretty well every day, right? Not every stock is going to move pretty well, every day or more days than not, at least, especially stocks that are in the same business or sector as this is. So, at least the more that you're with us in the mornings and, you see a scan in the mornings, you know what we're focused on, you're going to learn over time and be more reactant, be better reactant to these trades just once you see them. Tom is saying here, new tools to me is Bookmap the same as Bookviewer. It is not. Bookmap is, Bookmap is what we call level 4. So, that is the next level up. So really briefly, what I'll do is I'll show you the NASDAQ Book Viewer. That right there is what we nickname level 3 here. This right here is the NASDAQ Book Viewer, right? Time that. There we go. I know students like Chuck and Kathleen right now, a bunch of our students in our trading room, they tend to see this every day. So right here, this is the NASDAQ Book Viewer. And this is comparable to the program that was on my far right of my screen, the TradeStation Matrix. This is built into my platform. This is a standalone product. So if you don't have TradeStation, then this would be a great tool to just sign up for. It's what we nickname level 3. It's officially known as the NASDAQ Book Viewer. It's $15 a month. Now, though, otherwise, the next step above this would be what we nickname level 4, and that's officially known as Book Map. That's something that we would have you hold off on just getting at first, just because we want you to go through our classes, at least see if this is something that you can commit to yourself over a period of time, see if this is something you want to commit to at least. And then once you start going through our classes, you get the feel for at least what we're focused on. Then at that point, we would suggest for you to at least, consider level 3 or level 4 to get yourself. For as inexpensive as this is, at least, it's still kind of the same mantra as you don't want to go out and buy a car without knowing how it drives first, right? Pretty simple one there, right? What's the C2 member cost for level 4? Phil, just private chat me on the side, my friends. I'll talk to you about that. Just otherwise, there's not as much a big discount really there. All right, let's go through some questions otherwise that came in via email. I typically go through those first. My apologies for anyone that had sent in an email just beforehand. Got a bit sidetracked there at first, but I want to make sure that we go through everything here, just stocks that we'd called out and otherwise emails that students took the time to send in. So, all right, so actually, one I did cover. I did cover actually the miners. That was sent in via private chat actually from yesterday. So I did that at least. All right. So actually, speaking of which, so I know not as many people are as interested within the crypto sector. And I get it. I understand. But I had a question from one of our gold students, Abdul, and he was asking about one of the cryptos called Ripple, otherwise known as XRP. He's looking at the weekly and yearly charts, and he's thinking that there is potential for a breakout. So we're going to treat this the same way that we treat simply just a stock. We're just going to go back on the charts for Abdul, see what this crypto looks like, and just see the overall trends, what he's focused on with it. All right, 1 second here. Give me a second here, Abdul. I got to make sure I get the right one. You know what also stinks? I unsubscribed from TradingView. My yearly sub just expired, so I'm probably going to get some ads on this now that you'll see. I got to re-sign up for that. All right, so Abdul, you're talking about Ripple, right? XRP, the crypto. He's here in chat right now, and he says, yep. Okay, cool. All right, so let's just look at this. This is a crypto, folks. We're focused on historical charting, just like you would a stock. It is as simple as that. If you are not interested in crypto, no sweat. We are just going to show you how we would look to plot this chart. All right. Now, the first thing with this is that this has a pretty decent history, and I think that you can go back even more, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see if there's even a different one I could even use. There's 1,000 different exchanges here, so that's where it gets a little murky with like knowing which is the right one to use. Oh yeah, there's a ton of data here. There we go. This one has pretty much everything that you need to see. Look at this. This was at like trading at fractions of pennies at first, Abdul, back in like 2015, 2017 area. Crazy, right? Well, I don't think it's fallen that far again, right? So we're probably just going to do away with that. But you could see at least this did hit an all-time high back in the very beginning of 2018. That was at $3.28. $3.28. Basically all-time high there, right? Now, though, over time, what it basically did was it looked to have built past resistance into a support. Now, this is easy to say. This, crypto Ripple, it pushed back up over time, I guess. But folks, there was a bunch of stuff going on with Ripple and like the SEC for a long time. So this was not a healthy trade for like this time period here. There was a lot of scrutiny behind this crypto for a little bit. I think most, if not all, of their stuff now is pretty much in the past now. So they got that stuff cleared with the SEC, I think, at this point. But this was not really a healthy crypto for a long time. I just want to let you know that. Now, though, that's a different story compared to today. So they got all of their SEC stuff finished up back in 2000. Actually, you know what? Pardon me, ignorance here. I think this was where they finished up with the SEC. I think this right here, even. This is back in 2023, last year. So my apologies on that. I just remember this pop and drop a lot better. This was when they finished up with the SEC stuff. It's a lot more recent. So since that time, Abdul, well, it bounced back up. We are trying to make a higher high, at least from this peak back from the end of last year. The name of the game is holding support. Chris says that roughly around 67 cents is a big level. Well, kind of. I mean, it's where it topped off, I guess, here on this one day. It broke above it kind of here. If you're looking longer here, just around this time frame, I'd probably just even use this. You'd want to focus on a series of highs that are holding relatively consistent, not just one spike. And you could even go back to here and say, well, maybe not even this price here, I guess 73 or so cents, but even going back to like 2020, 2021, where it spiked up as high as high as 77 maybe. So once we begin to see it not just break above that, Abdul, but really, more importantly, much more importantly, hold above that as support. Hold above that. That's where we're going to see a much larger move shortly after. And the same is to be said with any like stock just in terms of a swing. I was talking about this just yesterday. Let's look at it live right now, right? Do you folks remember me talking about Pfizer? Steve in the afternoon was calling it out as a day trade. Um, I should have put it on our watch list yesterday, honestly, and we were focused on it all throughout the afternoon. But I was saying that, hey, we have a pretty good daily chart level, kind of this area here altogether, both of these. It was holding under this area pretty nicely back in February, and then also back, I think, even from back even in 2020 and so forth. Let me just check really briefly. One sec, folks. Just getting a quick little private chat. One moment. All right. So just with that, you could see Pfizer, at least it ended up at least pulling back this morning, this afternoon so far. Question is, are we going to see support hold? Simple as that. If we don't see support hold in the next day, 2 days, then this is not going to be a great swing. It's going to be a false breakout, comes back down, right? The same is to be said, Abdul, with that one crypto. All right, now, folks, really quick. Hey, I got to finish up actually because Fausto coming up right at 12 p.m. sharp. As I brought up from the very beginning of Traders Talk today, we are doing a 3-part boot camp throughout this week, introductory to day trading series hosted by Fausto. Typically, we do a webinar once per week, but this is going to be a lot more in depth, going into Nasdaq bookviewer, going into level 3, and even level 4 from there. So again, hey, that's coming up at the top of the hour here, 12 p.m. Eastern time. So just with that, hey, for all of us interested in joining us, just make sure that you register. Click the link inside the trading room chat and on YouTube as well. You can click the link on YouTube. You could also scan the QR code on the top left of the stream if you're joining us there. That'll get you access to our workshop coming up later on today. Yes, Chris, that will be recorded. All of Fausto's workshops, typically are, especially this 3-part workshop. That will be recorded. So I believe that'll be even replayed later on our YouTube channel. So you could also join us there, just at Cyber Trading U. But this Traders Talk workshop recorded. Fausto's boot camp today through Thursday, all recorded. All right, folks. But hey, if you have any other questions, feel free to shoot me over a quick email, josh@c2trading.com. Actually, I unfortunately didn't have the chance to get back to one of us here through YouTube. So for Phil S, perhaps just feel free to shoot me a quick email myself, josh@c2trading.com. Or hey, join us live inside our trading room. Scan that QR code like we had said. We look forward to seeing you there. But otherwise, hey, Fausto at the top of the hour, folks. So we look forward to seeing everyone in that boot camp coming up pretty shortly.